Hello, I miss Carla. My hair's getting pretty fluffy. It's getting kind of sticky outy around my ears. I did get my online order of hair cutting supplies. So if I do attempt to cut my own hair, I'll be sure to record it so everybody can see how it goes. But I might wait a little longer because I think I can go a little longer before it's desperate times for hair cutting. We're going to continue reading Escape from Mr. Lemoncello's Library by Chris Grabenstein. And I noticed on the cover, we have some stuff we've seen already. I believe there was a holographic tiger at the very beginning of the story. Maybe this is the girl who likes to read books all the time. I forgot her name. The one who rode up on that hovering thingy. This is like a spinning game piece, but I don't know if you can see, the numbers are 100, 200, 300, 400, and they all are based on the Dewey Decimal System. So it says 400 is languages, 000 is generalities, 100 is philosophy and psychology. So that's pretty interesting. And then there are other game pieces like here. I like to look at the cover and see what it makes me think of. Ooh, and on the back, that looks like Sherlock Holmes. I guess because they're trying to solve a mystery. I wonder if Sherlock Holmes will really be in the story. And I don't know, somebody with a fishing pole? All right. We are on chapter 18, page 88. The contestants raced down the stairs to the rotunda reading room. Kyle saw Haley Daly dash down another set of steps into the basement to what the floor plan called the stacks. Miguel and Andrew, the two library experts, grabbed separate tables and started working the touchscreen computers. Bridget Wadge did the same thing. Charles Chiltington strolled out the arched doorway and into the foyer with the fountain. Yasmin Smith-Snyder was running around the circular room with her floor plan in front of her face like someone frantically checking their text messages while racing down a crowded sidewalk. Sierra Russell found a comfy chair and sat down to finish her book. The girl definitely wasn't into the whole spirit of the game. "So, Kyle," said Akimi, "you want to form an alliance?" "What do you mean?" "It's what people do on reality shows like Survivor. We help each other until, everybody else is eliminated, and we have to stab each other in the back." I don't remember hearing anything about eliminations." "Oh, right. But hey, there was nothing in the rules that said we couldn't share the top prize. I just want to win." "Cool. So we're a team?" "Sure." "Great," said Akimi. "I nominate you to be our captain. All in favor, raise their hands." Kyle and Akimi both raised their hands. "It's unanimous," said Akimi. "Okay, let's go ask that antique librarian a question." "What? We both get to ask one question, right?" "Right." "Okay, here's mine. Hey, lady, how do we get out of here?" "And you think she'll tell you?" "No, not really." "So what's your plan?" "Well, I was thinking." Suddenly, Yasmin shouted, "I win!" The rest of them stopped whatever they were doing. "It's just like last night when Kyle found dessert in the most obvious place. To get out of the library, all we have to do is use one of the fire exits. Duh." She headed toward a hallway between the Book Nook Cafe and Community Meeting Room A. Kyle stood up. Yasmin, I think maybe you missed some of what..." Charles Chiltington dashed into the room and shouted, "You're not going to win, Yasmin, not unless you've beaten me to that fire exit." He bolted toward the corridor. Yasmin bolted toward it too. "You guys?" said Kyle. Kyle could see a red exit light glowing at the far end of the hallway Charles and Yasmin were sprinting down. Charles stumbled and fell. Yasmin kept running. Harder, faster. She slammed into the exit bar on the metal door. Alarms sounded. Flashing red lights swirled. Somewhere, a tiger roared. Mr. Lemoncello's voice rang out of the overhead speakers. Sorry, Yasmin. That's where your sidewalk ends. You broke the rules. You are out of the game. Your library card will be placed in the discard bowl and you will be going home. As the fire exit door slowly swung shut and Yasmin disappeared into the bright sunshine outside the library, Kyle checked out Charles Chiltington, who would have been sent home if he hadn't stumbled and had reached the exit first. The guy was smirking. That was when it hit Kyle. Chiltington had faked Yasmin out. He knew she couldn't win by going out of fire exit, but he ran down the hall to fool her into thinking she was doing the right thing. Oh yeah, Chiltington was definitely in it to win it, no matter who he had to trample. Whistling casually, Charles strolled back to the lobby. What's Chiltington doing out in the entrance hall? Said Akimi. They told us the way out isn't the way in. Before Kyle could answer, Andrew Peckelman started shouting at Miguel, who had wandered over to Peckelman's table. Get away! You're trying to steal my idea! No, man, said Miguel. I just happened to see your screen, and I don't think that particular periodical. You know what, Miguel? I don't really care what you think. This isn't school. This is the public library, and you're not the boss in here, so just leave me alone. Miguel tossed up his hands. No problem, bro. I was just trying to help. Ha! You mean help me lose. Andrew stormed up the closest spiral staircase to the second floor and the Dewey Decimal Rooms. Miguel, looking sort of sad, headed up a separate spiral staircase. Bridget Wadge trailed after them. Want to follow those guys like Bridget did? Whispered Akimi. I'll take Peckelman. You take Miguel. No thanks, said Kyle, looking up at the domed ceiling. I'm much more interested in the windows up there. 3 stories above the rotunda floor, just below the Wonder Dome, there was a series of 10 arched windows set between the recessed statue nooks. The windows acted like skylights at the base of the dome, allowing sunshine to flood into the room below. Do you think those windows open? Asked Akimi. Maybe, maybe not. But I've never let a closed or locked window stand between me and winning a game. Just ask my dad. What? Never mind. Come on. Kyle trotted over to the cushy chair where Sierra Russell was peacefully reading her book. Excuse me. Hate to interrupt. Sierra raised her head. She had a very dreamy look in her eyes. I need a book. Really? Said Sierra. What kind? Like the one you found, up there. He gestured to the curving bookcases climbing up the back half of the rotunda. Fiction, said Sierra. Right, said Kyle. Love me some fiction. Well, what sort of story do you like? Something way up high, said Kyle. The higher the better. Really? Yep. Well, that's an interesting way to put together a reading list, basing it on bookcase elevation. I'd like something on the top shelf, maybe right under the hologram statue of that guy hanging out with the Cat in the Hat. That's Dr. Seuss, said Sierra. He wrote The Cat in the Hat. Sweet, said Kyle, but I just like how close he is to that window. Chapter 19. Oh, Mrs. Tobin, Akimi called out. I need to use my librarian consultation. You sure about this? Said Kyle. That's the beauty of being a team. After we burn through mine, we'll still have yours. The hologram librarian appeared and advised Akimi that Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain was the book located right underneath the holographic image of Dr. Seuss and the Cat in the Hat. After Mrs. Tobin vanished, Kyle and Akimi used their desktop computer to find the call number for Huckleberry Finn. Kyle grabbed a pen and scribbled it down on his palm. Are you going to do what I think you're going to do? Said Akimi. Yep, I'm going to float up there, hoist myself into that nook where the hologram is, reach over to the window, push it open, and stick out my hand. Technically, I will have found my way out of the library. Nothing in the rules said anything about how far outside we had to go to win. You could fall. I don't think so. I'm wiry, like a monkey. Seriously, Kyle, it isn't worth it. Yes it is. Did I mention I want to win? You should improvise a safety harness, suggested Sierra Russell. Huh? Well, in this adventure book I read once, the hero was in a very similar predicament. So he removed the curled handset wires from several telephones, bundled them together, and made a safety rope. 10 minutes later, Kyle, Akimi, and Sierra had stripped the springy wires off a couple of telephone handsets. Kyle looped the cables around his waist and tied the other end to the handrail of the hover ladder. When fully extended, the safety rope would stretch out to a little more than 20 feet. It should work. Be careful up there, said Akimi. Yes, said Sierra, who wasn't reading her book anymore. Apparently, watching a real live person risk his real live life by doing something really, really scary was one thing more exciting than reading. Kyle locked his feet into the hover ladder's ski boot brackets. Here we go. Serious adrenaline raced through his body as he tapped the call number for Huckleberry Finn into the hover ladder's book locator keypad. When you open the window, said Akimi, just shout, I found the way out, and we win. Right, said Kyle. All three of us. Huh? Hey, Sierra came up with the safety rope idea. She's on our team now, too. Fine, whatever, just don't break your neck. Not part of the plan. Kyle pressed the enter button on the control panel. The platform floated up off the ground and drifted slightly to the right. Be careful, said Akimi. Watch it. I'm not doing anything, said Kyle. This thingamajiggy is doing all the work. I'm just along for the ride. Kyle gripped the handles as the platform rose higher and higher. He sailed past books by Tolstoy and Thackeray. Tilting back his head, he looked up at the semi-transparent statues projected into the curved niches next to the arched windows. They were a weird mix. A thoughtful African-American man in a three-piece suit and a bow tie. A guy with long curly hair, old-fashioned clothes, and a looking glass. A long-haired dude in a scruffy shirt hiding behind cutouts of the letters P and B. A bald guy with a beard. Since the statues were really holographic projections, they had chisel-type labels floating in front of their pedestals, identifying who the famous people were. The ones closest to Kyle were George Orwell, Lewis Carroll, Dr. Seuss, and Maya Angelou. As he continued to climb, Kyle could hear the soft whir of the electromagnetics invisibly lifting him toward the ceiling. And then he heard something much louder. What a ridiculous idea! Charles Chiltington. He was standing on the second-floor balcony at the far side of the rotunda. You know, Keeley, I thought about doing the same thing, but then I noticed something you obviously overlooked. There's a wire mesh security screen on the other side of those windows. The levitating platform stuttered to a stop. Enjoy staring at the ceiling, Keeley. I'm off to win yet another game. Kyle ignored Chiltington and grabbed hold of the ledge beneath Dr. Seuss's berth. He tried to haul himself up, but his feet wouldn't budge. They were locked in place by those ski boot clamps. And this close to the skylights, Kyle could see that Chiltington was right. There was a security screen on the other side of the windows. Kyle checked his wristwatch. It was 1 p.m. He and his teammates had wasted an hour on the lame window idea. He sighed heavily and stared up at the quivering Seuss projection in the bowed niche above his head. The cat in the hat's mouth started to move. Think left, and think right, and think low, and think high. Kyle recognized the voice. It was Mr. Lemoncello. Oh, the thinks you can think up, if only you try. In other words, Kyle was back to square one. He needed to think up a whole new escape plan. The ladder began a slow and steady descent to the floor, even though Kyle hadn't pushed a button. Don't listen to Smarmy Pants Charles, Akimi coached as Kyle coasted toward the floor. It was worth a shot. I agree, said Sierra. A blood-curdling scream came ringing up the staircase from the basement. "That's Haley," said Akemi. "I saw her go downstairs." "That's where the stacks are," added Sierra. "Come on," said Kyle. "She could be in serious trouble." "You should never help your competition, Keeley," scoffed Charles as he casually strolled down a spiral staircase. "Unless, of course, you always play to lose." Chapter 20. Losers. That's what Charles Chiltington thought about sentimental saps like Kyle Keeley. A damsel in distress starts screaming, and he forgets all about winning the game to go rescue her? What a pathetic loser. Unless, of course, Haley Daly was screaming because she had already found the alternate exit. That made Charles laugh. Impossible. Although quite pretty, Haley Daly, the princess of the 7th grade, was a total airhead. There was no way a dumb girl like her could have outsmarted Charles Chiltington. It was time to play his hunch. Twice already, the head librarian, Dr. Zinchenko, had said, "The library staff is here to help you find whatever it is you are looking for." She said it once when they were just about to enter the library, again when she was reading the laundry list of rules. Well, what Charles was looking for was a way out of the building that wasn't the front door and wouldn't set off any alarms. That was why he kept coming back to the lobby with the gurgling fountain. Why he kept studying the display case labeled Staff Picks, our most memorable reads. "The staff is here to help," he muttered. "These are staff picks. Ipso facto, this has to be some sort of enormous clue." Inside the sealed bookcase, Charles saw 12 book covers. One for each of the 12-year-old players, he wondered. The display items weren't actual books. They were cover art, mounted on book-sized foam core. 3 covers were lined up on each of the case's 4 shelves. Since they weren't actual books with spines, none of the covers included their call numbers. Charles focused on the 3 books lined up on the bottom row. Hoosier Hospitality was on the left. In the Pocket, Johnny Unitas and Me was in the middle. The Dinner Party was on the right. Charles decided to concentrate on the Johnny Unitas title. He moved into the rotunda and did a quick card catalog search on one of the desktop computers. When he typed "In the Pocket," a matching cover image popped up, but still no call number. In the spot where the identifier should have been, there were instead a censor's thick black box and the words "ID temporarily removed from system." Scrolling further down the screen, Charles came across a rather unusual annotation. "You didn't really think we'd make it that easy, did you?" Charles grinned. The computer was telling him he was on the right track. He glanced up from the desk. The children's room was directly in front of him. The book about Johnny Unitas, with its cartoony cover depicting a football player wearing a number 19 jersey and dropping back to launch a pass, was most likely a children's book. Of course, it was also a sports biography. So would it be shelved with sports books, biographies, or children's books? Charles went back to the computerized card catalog. He read the book's description. Billy wants to be a great quarterback like his hero, Johnny Unitas, but his coach is worried he'll get hurt. It sounded like fiction, a made-up story. It had to be in the children's room. As Charles crossed the slick marble floor, something else struck him. This was like Husker Du, a memory game he had played when he was in kindergarten. He was on a hunt to find a hidden match for the football book cover he had just memorized. This was, in short, another memory game. That was why the staff picks display had been subtitled "Our Most Memorable Reads." "Clever, Lemoncello," he mumbled. "Very clever indeed." Charles entered the children's department. It didn't take him very long to find the book because "In the Pocket" was propped up on a miniature stand on top of a shelf. "Found it," Charles proclaimed. Then, savoring the moment, he picked up the book and read the title out loud. In the Pocket, Johnny Unitas and Me. All of a sudden, a row of animatronic geese tucked into a corner of the room started honking and singing. They call him Mr. Touchdown, yes, they call him Mr. T. The squawking bird startled Charles so much he dropped the book. When he did, a 4x4 card fluttered out from behind its cover. Charles bent down to pick it up. Printed on the card was a black and white silhouette. A quarterback wearing a number 19 jersey, just like Johnny Unitas, was arching back his arm to throw a pass. Charles grinned. He was definitely on the right track. He tucked the silhouette card into his pocket and hurried back to the lobby to memorize more book covers. There's the silhouette. Chapter 21. Ouch! I'm stuck! Help! Haley Daly's cries sailed up the staircase as Kyle led the charge down the steps into the stacks. So what exactly are the stacks? Asked Akimi, 3 steps behind Kyle. It's where the library stores its collection of research material, said Sierra, who was 2 stairs behind Akimi. The 3 of them reached the basement. It was filled with tidy rows of floor-to-ceiling shelving units. Help! Haley sounded like she was on the far side of the room, behind the walls of metal storage racks, crowded with boxes, books, and bins. What is all this stuff? Said Kyle, looking for a passageway, trying to figure out how to get wherever Haley was. Mostly rare books and documents you can't check out, said Sierra. But if you fill out a call slip, you can use this material up in the reading room. With a whir and a whoosh of its electric motor, a shiny robot the color of the stormtroopers in Star Wars scooted across an intersection between bookshelves. It moved on tank treads and had what looked like a shopping cart attached to its front. Let's follow that robot, said Kyle. It might know the fastest way to reach Haley. The trio dashed up a narrow pathway to where they saw the robot, extending its quadruple-jointed mechanical arm to pluck a flat metal box out of a slide-in compartment. The box had been stored in a section of shelving with a flashing LCD that read, Magazines and Periodicals, 1930s. Somebody upstairs wants an old magazine, said Akimi. They're probably researching the Gold Leaf Bank building, said Sierra. I think it was built in the 1930s. Help! Screamed Haley. I'm stuck! Hang on, shouted Kyle. We're coming. Well, hurry up already. This way, said Kyle. They scampered up another aisle, turned right, and saw Haley, her hand jammed through a horizontal slot near the top of the basement wall. To reach it, she'd had to stand on an elevated treadmill, maybe 30 feet long. Since the thing was rolling, Haley was jogging in place so she wouldn't fall on her face. The high-tech conveyor belt was actually a series of rollers. 10 robot carts, staggered so no 2 were directly across from each other, were lined up on either side. I think it's an automatic book sorter, said Sierra. That laser beam near Haley's ankles probably scans a book's tag and tells the conveyor belt which of the 10 sorting trays to shove it into. You guys, screamed Haley, hurry up and rescue me! Kyle stepped back, tried to assess the situation. What is that slot you're hanging onto? The bottom of the stupid book drop, said Haley, trotting on the treadmill. I saw it on the floor plan. People can walk up to it on the sidewalk and return their books. I figured it had to lead down here. Smart move, said Kyle. You could crawl through the slot and escape. If you were the size of a book, Akimi said sarcastically. I never got that far, said Haley. The minute I stepped onto this belt thing, it started moving. Kyle nodded. Probably a weight-activated switch. A book falls in, said Akimi. The sorter starts up. Clever, said Kyle. Plus, it gives our game its first booby trap. Well, the game is no fun if you're the booby stuck in the trap, said Haley. Kyle turned to Sierra. We need to stop the belt so Haley can yank her hand out of that slot without falling on her butt or cracking open her skull. Have you ever read a book where the hero outwits an escalator or a rolling checkout belt in the grocery store or something? No, said Sierra. Not really. How about one where the hero just flips an emergency shut-off switch? Asked Akimi. Because that's what I'd do if, I found one. Akimi was standing next to a wall-mounted switch box. She flicked it down. The conveyor belt slowed to a stop. Ta-da! Another chapter for my amazingly awesome autobiography, if I ever write one. Haley yanked her hand out of the book return slot. It sort of popped when it finally sprang free. She collapsed to her knees on the frozen treadmill. My hand feels flatter than a pancake, she moaned. Are you hurt? Asked Kyle. Maybe we should tell the security guys that... What? That I have a boo-boo and need to go home? Forget it, Kyle Keeley. You're not going to beat me that easily. I'm not trying to. Haley showed him the palm of her hand. Save it, Keeley. She crawled off the conveyor belt. One way or another, I'm going to win this game. I just hope starring in Mr. Lemoncello's commercials earns me some decent money. She hobbled around the bookshelves toward the staircase up to the reading room. When she was gone, Akimi raised her hand. Question? Yeah, said Kyle. How come the guys inside the control room didn't flip a switch to shut down the book sorter when they saw Haley doing her cardio cha-cha-cha on it? Kyle shrugged. Maybe they weren't watching. Actually, said Sierra, pointing to a square tile on the floor near the book sorter, I think they were. Kyle looked down. The tile was glowing like one of the tablet computer screens upstairs in the rotunda. Kyle read the words zipping across the illuminated square. Congratulations, he read out loud. For helping Haley and being a sport, you've earned much more than a good report. The tile popped open. Inside a small compartment was a rolled-up tube of paper with a yellow card clipped to its end. Huh, said Akimi. I guess somebody was watching. Kyle pulled the yellow card off the paper tube. It smelled like lemons. What's it say? Asked Sierra. Kyle flipped the card over so Sierra and Akimi could see what was printed on it. Super duper bonus clue. Let's do one more chapter. Chapter 22. Oh man, that was so dumb. Haley could not believe how idiotic she had been. Trying to crawl out of a book return slot? Like that was going to work. She was giving herself a good talking to as she trudged up the steps to the first floor. When she entered the rotunda, she saw Charles Chiltington slipping out into the lobby again. Chiltington was a snake. Worse, a garden slug. Maybe a leech. Something oily and slimy that left a greasy trail and liked to mooch off other people's ideas. That was why Chiltington had tailed the twin library nerds, Peckelman and Fernandez, upstairs during last night's dessert hunt. Haley was smart enough to know that Chiltington was hoping to steal the book geek's ideas. Actually, Haley was a lot smarter than anybody, except her teachers and whoever scored her IQ tests, knew. With certain people, mainly grown-ups and silly boys, pretending to be a ditzy princess made getting what she wanted a whole lot easier. And what she wanted right now was money. Lots of money. Her dad had been out of work for nearly a year. They'd run through all their rainy day savings. They'd had to borrow from relatives and in-laws. If Haley could win this competition and become Mr. Lemoncello's spokesmodel, her family's money woes would be over and they wouldn't have to sell their home. And once other people saw her on TV for Lemoncello games, they'd want her for their commercials too. And movies. Maybe her own sitcom. Something on the Disney Channel. But for all that to happen, Haley needed a winning idea, and fast. Something better than crawl through a slot that's barely wide enough for your wrist. Maybe she should flush herself down the toilet and escape through the sewers like Charles did in that video game. She headed over to the Book Nook Cafe so she could sit down and think. She stepped into the room and checked out the snack table. There were trays of cookies, strawberries, bananas, and brownies. Sitting down to nibble on a macaroon, she studied the row of cookbooks displayed on the bookshelves lining the wall. One in particular caught her eye. Cupcakes, cookies, and pie. Oh my! Because the cover looked extremely familiar. 2 googly-eyed sheep made out of chocolate-frosted cakes with gobs of mini marshmallows for fleece. Haley had seen the cover before, in the lobby. It was in that glass case of memorable reads selected by the library staff. She went over to the shelf and picked up the book. When she opened the cover, she discovered 2 cards. One was a 4x4 piece of white cardboard with the black silhouette of a sheep on it. The second card was yellow and about the same size as a community chest card in Monopoly. Haley sniffed the card. It smelled like lemons. She grinned. For Lemoncello. On one side of the yellow card was printed, Super Duper Bonus Clue. On the other side was the clue. Your marvelous memory has earned you even more memories. Proceed to the Lemoncello Abelia room. Look for item number 12. That's the sheep silhouette. Haley slid both cards into the back pocket of her jeans, pulled out her library floor plan, and found the Lemoncello Abelia room. It was up on the 3rd floor. Making certain nobody, i.e. Charles Chiltington, was following her, Haley quietly dashed up a spiral staircase to the 2nd floor. Checking for Chiltington one more time, she tiptoed up to the 3rd floor where she found the room labeled Lemoncello Abelia, Mini Museum of Personally Interesting and Somewhat Quirky Junk. Haley opened the door and stepped inside. The front room was like a storage warehouse. Cardboard boxes were stacked on top of wooden crates sitting on plastic bins stuffed with papers. All the boxes, bins, and crates were numbered. She saw one labeled number 576. Guess Mr. Lemoncello never throws anything away, Haley remarked as she scanned the heaps, looking for the number 12 mentioned on her bonus card. Weaving her way through the stacks and columns, Haley finally found the super duper bonus. Item number 12 was an old boot box from an Alexandriaville shoe store Haley had never heard of. Someone had taped a label on the lid. Paraphernalia, accoutrements, and doodads from Mr. Lemoncello's 12th year. Haley lifted the lid. The box was filled with all sorts of confusing knickknacks, hand-whittled prototypes for game pieces, a star-spangled red, white, and blue HHH Humphrey button, a battered clasp envelope sealed up with tons of tape. Someone had scribbled, "First and worst idea ever," on the front of the envelope with a magic marker. There were also a felt pennant from Disneyland and a rubber-banded stack of cartoony cards for something called Wacky Packages. The card on top was Wiki's breakfast of chumps. Haley knew this memory box had to be an important clue. Why? She had absolutely no idea. That's the end of that chapter. The next chapter is 23 on page 114. I wanted to mention, in case you're interested, quite a few years ago, I applied to work at a library annex in South Carolina for the University of South Carolina. And they have this big building where they keep all of their extra books that people don't use very often, but you might want to get access to, kind of like the stacks in the basement. And everything was arranged, instead of being arranged by like topic, it was arranged by size. So there were books that could all fit in the same box, and then the box was on the shelf. And it was all like you wouldn't know how to find it unless you looked at the system in the computer. But in order to get to the books on the really high shelves, they drove this thing down the aisles that reminded me of the hovering platform in the domed room, because it was like kind of what they use at warehouses to get pallets off of high shelves. Those are called cherry pickers, except for you just ride in this thing and it went really fast and it would zoom down the aisle and then it would lift you up to the top of the books and you would be up, 30 feet in the air. And I got to ride it. I didn't get the job, but I did get invited to do an interview, with the manager, which was interesting. And while I was on the interview, I got to ride in that machine and go up really high. It was kind of scary, but it was cool. Anyway, so it's not exactly a hovering device, but it was very fancy and advanced. They had a name for it. It was something like the beast or the monster or something. But it was cool. Anyway, fun little story from my history of trying to get library jobs. Have a good day. Have a good weekend. We will continue on Monday. Bye-bye.